Hello, everybody, and welcome to the May 10th, 2022 iteration of the Kubernetes SIG Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. Let's get started with some announcements. First announcement is we've recovered the Zoom account, so we were able to get the recordings for the past meetings and upload them. We'll work on that sometime early, like in the next couple of days. And this will include this meeting's recording too. Next announcement is we're going to cancel next week's community meeting because of KubeCon. I think a lot of folks are going to be traveling, and I think people should make the most of KubeCon, whether they're attending virtually or in person. We can work async for any of the enhancements related issues to do that. Next announcement is I think the 125 milestones are still not totally in place, but right now the tentative release or enhancements freeze is Friday, June 17th. So that's about 5 weeks right now. But it always helps to have enhancements ready to review and merge sooner than that. So that's all I have for announcements. If anybody has any announcements right now, feel free to add them or speak up. We can move on. Okay, next is give some space for new contributors if they would like to introduce themselves, ask any questions, do anything like that. So if there's anybody who's new here, if there's anybody who's new to the meetings who would like to introduce themselves, feel free to do so. Okay, we'll move on from that. As for the agenda, there's a couple of agenda items, and then if we have time, I'd like to just talk a little bit about 125 planning. First item on the agenda I added, we finally have a pull request up for all of the docs work that some of us have been doing in 124. I commented in the pull request that I was hoping to have those land with 124 docs, but the release team just said they couldn't commit to bandwidth to review that and make sure it got merged. So we said we'd merge it pretty early into 124, like into main, into the live view site pretty soon after 124 releases. So that's up. If there's a link in the agenda, you can take a look. Most of it's a pretty substantial review. Most of what we're doing is we were breaking up that big Windows or intro to Windows page and moving sections out to more relevant areas like existing, networking, storage sections. A lot of these have been reviewed in PRs that were already open before. We just decided to not merge those PRs. So take a look. If you are not familiar with how pull requests work in the website repository too, whenever there's a pull request coming up, there's a it will build and deploy a preview site, so you can use this to help see how things are going to get laid out too. So please take a look and provide feedback. Next agenda item is Windows Server 20H2 support. We were just talking about this in the CI triage, the CI signal triage meeting previously, if you came early. But James, Claudio, did you guys want to, or Ravi, anybody, did you guys want to discuss this?
Sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Quick question. Which one is this about the current tests or?
Yeah, yeah. So right now, James, did you want to comment, or should I take this?
Sure. So for the SAC releases for our Windows test grid jobs, we typically run that against the master or the main branch of Kubernetes. We have trimmed out all of the SAC releases except for 20H2 at this point, because they had hit end of life. currently, this test is failing on the main branch of Kubernetes because AKS engine no longer is not going to support the latest version of Kubernetes. And so we were just discussing this morning what we should do with the job, and then it kind of came up whether or not we want to have 20H2 support for 125. And so we started looking into it a little bit, and the end of life for 20H2 is in August, and the Kubernetes release for 125 is also in August, slightly after, I think, a week or two, depending on things. And so I think the proposal is to not support 20H2 for the 125 release, but we wanted to bring it up in the community to make sure if there's any objections to that. And so we'd take the job that we have for AKS engine on the 125 branch and just move it to the 124 branch, I think, just to keep it running. But is there anybody out there? I'm not sure how many folks are actually using the SAC releases at this point. The SAC, just for more information, SAC releases are not happening anymore. So they announced, I think, about 8 months ago that they're only going to be releasing Windows Server 2019 and 2022, and then the next LTS after that, whatever it is. And so that makes it easier for everybody to consume these. But yeah, so that's what we've got.
Yeah, I think we use it in OpenShift. Elango or Anand, would that be a problem for us?
Sorry, I missed what was the question?
So I think the proposal, so right now we have the tests for the SAC releases for all on AKS engine, and AKS engine is, Microsoft has deprecated that project and won't be doing feature work in it to support 125 plus releases. Very early on, like already the 125 branch has taken in some changes that have broken compatibility with AKS engine. Specifically, they've removed a bunch of feature gates that were referenced in some of the setup. So I think what I heard James just mention is the proposal is we'll still keep the tests running for 125, but they'll be until the end of that scheduled support, which is in August, but we'll run those tests against the 124 branch since AKS engine has support for that.
Yeah, we plan to release support for 2022 as a part of WMCA 6.0. That's a part of OCP 4.11, which uses Cube 124. So I think we should be fine.
For 125, the proposal is to remove 20H2 support. That would not be.
We would be past.
Oh yeah, by then I think we would pass. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I think 20H2 is going to end by August or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fine.
Okay, sounds good. There'll be a PR for that too that people can comment on when we do switch those over. Okay, next agenda item. There's a new pull request job for the main branch. I think this is related. We've switched we've been working on switching most of the Windows jobs from AKS engine to CapZ, of course, API provider for Azure, and we've done that for the pull request job that you can trigger on PRs into Kubernetes. This is the new job to run. You can also see the jobs if you just do like /test ? In your PRs. So this is more of just an FYI. Everybody. Okay, does anybody have any other agenda items that they wanted to discuss? If not, we can talk a little bit about the 125 planning. I've tried to capture some of the work streams that I know about here with who I think is driving those work streams. So we can discuss that more, or we can talk about some other issues. It's up to everybody on the call.
Yeah, so I just had one question regarding containerd installation. So I think there is a script, and I can try to post the link here. And I've also seen like in one of these sync calls that there was a recommendation to install Hyper-V and Hyper-V PowerShell. Just wanted to make sure if that is required. And we're trying to do this as part of moving to Windows Server 2022, since the containers feature is not installed in that one.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, it's just thinking. I'm not sure if we're still recommend, or does anybody on the call know if we're still recommending to install the Windows, the Hyper-V and the PowerShell commandlet features for for Containerd specifically?
So to get the Hyper-V VM switch commandlets, you need to install Hyper-V, the Hyper-V feature. You can disable that after the fact if you do not need the Hyper-V feature itself. So I don't know if we have a recommendation on whether or not you do either one of those, but I know the OVA needed to be able to turn off Hyper-V because they weren't, they didn't have that support in the OS
Yeah,
they were using.
Yeah, like you need to turn it off as a service because if you don't support nested virtualization when it starts, but you need to install the feature because there's something related to containers that you need. Like you can't run containers unless you install Hyper-V as a feature on the VM. But when the VM starts, if you're in an environment that doesn't support nested virtualization, you better also make sure you disable that thing from the Hyper-V service from starting. That's something we learned the hard way at VMware when we were doing our CI jobs. Perry learned that because we realized we do all of our CI on nested virtualization, and we needed to make sure we disabled that in our image builder stuff.
So I dropped a link into the chat there that shows the work that Perry did to turn that off after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Also, recently, as part of the docs effort that I mentioned, there's been a push on the Kubernetes website to remove content on behalf of third-party or non-Kubernetes related like components there. So we used to have some sample installation script or setup steps for how to install Containerd on Windows. That has been removed and replaced with a hyperlink to docs in the Containerd repository. We should probably add a little bit of details about this there too.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I did see
So
a thread.
just question on this again, back to that Hyper-V, like the CNA which we are using, the content networking plugins also don't, I'm assuming we don't need Hyper-V for that, right? Just to confirm that.
Yeah, my understanding here is you shouldn't need Hyper-V to the Hyper-V feature enabled to run this. It sounds like that there is some, if you need to do some advanced setup for virtual switches to get your container networking to work, you may need to enable these features in order to get like PowerShell commandlets in order to do that configuration. But Hyper-V itself is not required.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, good, thanks.
And yeah, if you have any other questions, I think this would be a good candidate to reach out to folks in the SIG Windows Slack channel too, and we can help if you have specific issues after trying this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Does anybody have any other agenda items? No, look at some planning for a bit. Okay, I'll do a quick rundown here of what I have captured. If I missed anything, feel free to either add it to the agenda or mention it in the chat and we'll get it added. At a very high level for 125, I think these are some of the features or big buckets of work that enhancements or big buckets of work that I'm aware of that we'd like to work on. The first one is graduating host process containers to stable. We did a demo a little while ago, a couple meetings ago, about some of the behavior changes. And I'll just mention here that when I was doing the demo, I had mentioned that we were possibly have a difference in behavior on Windows Server 2019 and 2022. I believe that we've worked around some of those issues, so we should have the same experience on all of Windows supported operating or versions, OS versions. So it's good news. Next is the PodOS feature to stable. I believe that there's not much work needed for that, right? That's just update all the enhancements and flip the feature date, correct?
Actually, there is some dependency on pod security policies. So I'm making some change. If you remember, we had to make some change to Kubelet, and we will support 3 versions of Kubelet to a Kube API server, or 3 releases of Kubelet to a particular Kube API server. So that's one of the reasons we did not enable some of the changes that we want to do in pod security admission plugin. So it is a bit involved this time, but I think I have already PR up, an implementation PR up. Jordan has reviewed it 2 releases ago. I need to revive that. But overall, I think I know the changes that need to be made, and I think it's in a decent shape to get merged this release. The other thing that I wanted to ask the community, and I have posted this in Slack as well, is if anyone is using PodOS field, let us know, because the graduation criteria from beta to stable is having 2 use cases or 2 users who are actually using this. We have started using this in OpenShift. In 4.11, the next release, we are going to use this particular field. And Mark has told Cabzy is going to use it. And I think Philip has told that we are going to use it in, they are going to use it in Rancher. So if anyone else has started using it, let us know.
Yeah, we'll work to enable that pretty early on.
Why do you care, Ravi? You've got 2 people.
That is true. But if anyone else is using,
okay, cool.
It doesn't hurt to have more people, but
all right. That sounds great, though. It's cool that folks are already using it.
the SIG Windows KubeCon talk does talk about that feature. So hopefully once people see that, there'll be more adoption of it.
cool.
Okay, next was operational readiness. Is Amim or Chinchi on the call? I guess, or Jay, do you want to speak to that? Is this still like folks are working on this? I see Amim just popped on.
Yeah, we are working on that. We have like Chinchi finished the system that runs the tests. We are now gathering the test that exists on Kubernetes and filling out the YAML file. So our goal is to have this mapped.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, feel free to come to the meeting with a demo of this too at any point. I guess that goes for everybody too.
Anything you want to add, Jay?
Oh, it looks like Chinchi just joined. I was just pinged Chinchi to let her know we're discussing it. I don't know if there's any other updates, but I don't have any other updates. But yeah.
Yep. So we're just confirming that folks are working on this and for 125. Next one was some of the perf and soak tests. Marius on the call, I think, is going to be driving this. There's been some ongoing work. So hopefully we'll continue with this.
Yes, I'm here. I'm still having trouble to get them to pass. There are some PRs from the perf test report that were merged today, and hopefully I'll get some more progress this week.
Okay, awesome. Great. Next is Hyper-V isolated container support in Container D. I know some folks in Microsoft were working to try and enable this in Container D. Danny Cantor is going to be working on that. If anybody is interested in this, please reach out to Danny. right now, I think the focus is getting that support in container D, not much work in the Kubernetes repository, but there may be some usability like enhancements that come to how these get scheduled via pod specs and stuff in the future.
Dennis, this is a Slack handle in case you want to know more about that.
It's I don't remember what his Slack handle is. It's his GitHub is dcanta.
Okay.
Usually you can just if you post, I can add him in Slack.
Okay.
I can redirect.
Mark, I think one related question. I think there was some. I think it was Muzz, a couple of months back actually. He was giving a really good explanation or enumerating the differences between Hyper-V, process isolation, and host process containers. Do you have any slides or any like docs around like when to use what, pros and cons of each option? If you could point, me to that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think that part of the work is is doing that too. So like Hyper-V isolated containers are a lot of that's captured in here. I think that James just posted. I think that Hyper-V isolated containers. Let me try to figure out how to say this, but I think right now Danny is focusing on enabling some very specific use cases of Hyper-V isolated containers in Containerd and in Kubernetes, and so general documentation may not capture all of those use cases. And then we're hoping to like online more functionality in the future. We'll try and I think we're still trying to nail down what those use cases are and provide that guidance, because there is, like we've almost always seen, there is a pretty big performance overhead with Hyper-V isolated containers, and it definitely impacts density on the nodes. So part of this workstream is also having all of that guidance for users available.
Thanks.
Next one was the kubeadm support for Windows, or potentially having kube proxy images come out of the Kubernetes repository. This is something, James, Claudio, I think you guys are both interested in this. I don't know if this is something we actually want to pursue for 125 or not. And as far as I know, kubeadm works with Windows today.
So I've been looking into adding the steps necessary for building the kube proxy image directly in KK. Still have a couple of things to figure out, because how the build process works, it won't actually publish to any registry directly. It seems that it's just basically exporting the images as OCI images, as tar files, and then in some scenarios they are actually getting consumed by things like kind, for example. While the release process itself, it seems to be done by the release management of Kubernetes manually. So there's no automation regarding this there, but I am assuming that they are going to use make release images, which basically builds and generates the images for all binaries and all architectures and so on. Now, being tar files, I'm not exactly sure how they are uploading them to the registry itself. If they're actually loading the images into Docker and then they do Docker push, then there's an issue, because technically you cannot load Windows images into Linux at all, which basically means that they won't be able to upload any future kube proxy Windows images through the current process which they have. So I'm kind of at an impasse at that point. So yeah, that's what I'm currently trying to figure out.
Okay, interesting problems.
The biggest like problem, can you like articulate for the folks on here? Cause I know you've talked to us about it, but like sort of the broad problem that we're solving there.
So I think the broad problem that we're trying to solve is we have there's a KEP that's under the cluster API SIG for KubeADM support for Windows that keeps going stale. It's been open since like 1.14, 1.15 release. And that KEP is wildly out of date right now. I think it's all focused on having things set up with Docker, and that has a lot of workarounds that use things like Wins and other kind of tools that we don't even that we don't recommend to use, or that we're not using in production environments. So part of that is figuring out what we want to do with the KEP. Like KubeADM for Windows support mostly works. It's like we're using it in for all of the KEP-Z clusters, and I'm sure more people are using it too. So like part of this is what do we do with this? Do we just close that enhancement? Do we just update it and say, this all works, here's all the work that was done? I think cleaning that up too, because while it may be working today, if users stumble on that enhancement, I think they're going to be quite confused. The other facet of that work is KubeADM likes to try and deploy your kubeproxy image for you, and figuring out how to standardize on that is part of this work. I know we have there's a couple of different flavors of kubeproxy images that are getting built in the SIG Windows tools repository. KEP-Z is using images out of that repository, but I think long-term that's not the right place for those images. So figuring out both of those stories are what I had in mind here for this work, and I'll try and capture that in the meeting notes after the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can discuss this more in some of the future meetings or in Slack too.
I forgot whether we brought this up last time when we talked about it, but did we ever talk about just not installing the kube proxy as part of KubeADM?
That's how it works currently.
Yeah, but we can't go. Okay. Oh yeah, we did talk about that, and we said we can't go GA without kube proxy.
I think it's just it's a matter of making it easier for customers that are not using a cloud provider that choose to use KubeADM. I think like it works today. It just requires quite a bit of knowledge and expertise and understanding of how to wire everything together. And I think that's great for like a beta feature, but I think if we really wanted to call it GA, in my opinion, would be that we would make that easier for folks. I think that's the core of it, and that may be just a lower priority thing since there's quite a bit of other work happening. But I think that's the kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we shouldn't do this, but I would just say that like there's a way out, because we can say CNI providers nowadays are tightly coupled to the kube proxy implementation you're running, and may even provide that functionality for you. And blah, 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 blah. There's that whole argument we could make if we want to go GA and not do this. Just a thought, right? Like I don't have a strong opinion either way. Yeah.
Part of this work could just be saying things work. Here's some examples. Here's more information on how to set this up yourself. Have fun. But I think I think we should update the documentation, at least the enhancement proposal at some point, if we are going to leave it at the current state.
And I mean, some of that work could be as part of this KPNG. We don't necessarily have to build the kubeproxy into there. It could be, when KPNG has support for kubeproxy out of tree, then we could build the image in that repository and have docs on how to install it after using KubeADM. So I think that's the other path we can take.
I need to drop for SIG node right now. I saw Jay, you added this MSFT KPNG handoff. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think Dash Scott and some friends are going to join today, and I was going to help to see if we could start getting that work handed over. And I think Matt Fenwick also joined, who's been pairing with me on some of that stuff lately.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So yeah, a little after hours.
All right, thanks everybody. I'm gonna end the community meeting recording now and you guys can hang out.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye all, thanks for attending.
Bye.
Cool.